The views and opinions expressed in this podcast by the host or the guest do not necessarily reflect the views of Paranormal Buzz Radio or its sponsors. Use of any material produced by Paranormal Buzz Radio without express written consent is strictly prohibited. For information on everything Paranormal Buzz Radio has to offer, visit our website, paranormalbuzzradio.com. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Listener discretion is advised.
I think I've always believed in the paranormal, but the deeper I get in this field, the more questions I uncover. I started a program called Seeking the Paranormal in an effort to gain insight and dialogue from others interested in the same things as me. And while we've learned a lot together, the questions still remain. So I'm bringing my thoughts to the airwaves, and I've brought along my friends, Adam and John, to share in the fun. Together, we'll tackle the tough topics and debate the evidence as we continue to seek the paranormal. Happy Thursday. Actually, as I always say on Facebook, happy hashtag Here's the Thing Thursday. Tonight, we're doing 17B because we're going to finish up talking about the Demon House. I hope you were able to follow our last episode. I think we did an okay job, but like I said, there's two parts to it, and there's just so much to talk about that it's really hard to, keep it all together. So, anyway, we'll wrap up tonight, give you a little bit more of the story. John, did you watch?
I was running all the way to try and watch it, but I've had a heck of a week. I was. I got
we should have done
cloud migrations coming up, and
we should have done an episode of just us watching it, and the Prophet Inside Look. That's what we should have done.
They do videos now of people watching things.
That's what we should have done.
No, that would be extremely bad idea.
All right. Wheel.
I'd have to wear a bag on my head just so people could actually sit through it, and then we bleep out half of it.
We don't bleep out anything now.
Oh, we don't?
No.
Nobody told me that. Oh, man.
We don't believe on anything.
I wonder I don't get any fan mail.
It's John's first day.
We're listed as explicit.
Yeah, but I mean, that was. I thought that was just our opinions, not the words we use.
Both.
Whole thing.
That's both.
I don't have an opinion.
He does, though.
Everybody's different, except me.
Oh.
Hey. All right. Well,
conundrum.
Darren is back this week, so let's give him a quick call and see what he's got for us this week.
We're doing something different this week. It's Stump Adam tonight.
Nobody wants to hear my opinion. Nobody wants to hear my
opinion.
Is that your opinion?
Yeah.
I don't want to hear it.
How you guys doing?
We are doing good. Adam and John are arguing amongst themselves as to who's going to answer you, but otherwise we are doing just fine. How are you?
I'm doing good,
Good. Well, sir, what do you have for us tonight?
So, what I got tonight is something I've been thinking about for about a week now, and so basically what it comes down to is, okay, so when you guys go to a regular house or location that is known to be haunted, and what you do is you do the normal routine, search out the place, search out the area of the location and the history and all that stuff. The question I have is, now how different is that when you go to a log cabin haunting? How the house is actually made out of earth materials that can actually come from anywhere or within the area itself. So would that draw more energy in the house per se versus a regular house or location?
That is super interesting.
Well,
that's a tough one.
Here's the thing. I mean,
hashtag.
Yeah. Hashtag. Yeah. I mean, from the way I approach things is, I try not to do too much history at the beginning, because otherwise it will influence like pareidolia or, the things you think you're hearing. If you've got all that history in your head, you're probably going to hear it. So that's one thing. And the other thing is I try not to preempt myself before I go in. So to answer your question, as far as I'm concerned, I don't care really what it's made out of. I mean, I'm just there to see if anything happens, and to try and log it and figure out what's happening. I could do the same with a Lego house, really.
But we talk about limestone being a conductor and, water being a conductor. And people believe that these two elements can help the strength of a haunting.
Yeah, but to me, that's a narrative. You say it's a conductor.
I didn't say that.
Well, you're saying people said. Whoever said it, them. It's the nefarious them. That's fine. People can say it's a conductor. My next question would be a conductor of what? Because if they really, not against it. If they've got an idea, at least it's something I can measure, hopefully. So, if this is more conductive, what's it more conductive of would be my question. So, and that'd be worth an experiment. Go to a log cabin and see if you get, different readings on different equipment, maybe.
The other interesting aspect to that question, too, is if you've got a cabin that is haunted, could it possibly be from wherever the material came from? Or is it what happened?
No, because it's no different than a regular house. The wood that went into building my house, I don't know where it came from. It's no different than a log cabin.
But a log cabin is all that material.
My house is pretty much a wooden frame.
Well, but there's a lot more material.
Which came from even more different places.
There's a lot more material that goes along with a log cabin because, I'm sure what kind of paste they use to keep it all in place. But they say with a house, memories can linger with a house.
Yeah.
Now, with wood, and being out in being a cabin and all that stuff, how would wood soak up that energy and would it spit it out differently?
I think it's an interesting question. I don't have an answer for you. I think it's an interesting question. John thinks it's all in the narrative. Am I right?
Well, for example,
there's
England,
the land and whatnot, and if the log cabin was built on a, let's use Gettysburg, for instance, okay, and someone decided, well, you know what, I want to live out there, so I want to make this log cabin out there and grab materials, like you said, from anywhere. So how would that location handle that with something being built where there was a war site, and how it would perceive it differently? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
To me, the answer's in the question. It's the land you're on, not what you build on it. So if if you build it, let's say on Gettysburg, which is, has a lot of stuff going on, you build a house in the middle of somewhere where stuff's going on, you're probably still going to get stuff going on. Whether you build it out of brick or log cabin, as far as my view is. Doesn't matter what you build it out of. But, it's worth a thought and an investigation.
Yes, Mr. Hyatt, what is your view?
What's my
You're
view?
You're being awful quiet.
I know, because I'm just sitting back listening to everything, because I don't...
What a podcast, not a pod listen.
Well, no, it's a pod listen when you all are talking. I just get to sit back and listen and soak it all in. Maybe I'll learn something every now and again. It's an interesting concept. I guess one thing, people talk about like wood absorbing energy, limestone absorbing energy. So I guess one thought would be, okay, so like say you take a limestone foundation of a house that's torn down, that was haunted. Say you take that limestone and use it to build another house. Is that other house going to be haunted?
Also a good question.
That's, I guess, kind of, with the materials, would it travel with the materials or would it not? And I guess that would depend on your belief of certain materials holding certain
if you
energies.
tear down a haunted house, is the land still haunted? I mean,
Well,
I think
that raises a good question about that too, because about that house that Mr. Baggins.
that's what we're talking about
The
tonight.
demon house where it got to him so bad he destroyed the house.
Yep.
And so many people were so against that because now it's like you open up a bag of worms with that.
We're going to have the demon parking lot in about 5 years.
Actually, the priest who gave everybody and their brother their exorcisms, Father Mike, has actually gone on record to say he's very disappointed with the way that Zach ended things because he feels that by tearing down the house, Zach basically unleashed the demons to the world instead of keeping them confined into one building. That's his viewpoint.
Because demons can't use doors. It's a biblical
I'm just
weakness.
telling you what Father Mike said. But, and we're going to get into way too many different things here. But, I mean, when John investigated my mother's house, seemed to, anyway, be getting a response from somebody who was potentially Meskwaki or Second Fox and had been there for a long time. But the feeling was kind of that they were part of the land, not part of the house. So they're attached to the land. So even if you tear down my parents' old house and rebuilt something, they would still be there, right?
Yep.
Well, when you see, like, when people talk about, well, I saw this full-bodied apparition, but it looked like I could only see it from the knees up. Well, it's because that house was built up at some point in time, and so they're still walking where the floor used to be. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like when they, also they talk about them walking through walls. Well, at one point there was a door there.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I would say it sticks with the land.
And as far as houses go, I mean, I'd speculate, and I have no proof for this, but, the two different kinds of hauntings. One's either an echo, in which case I think the land's important, because that's where, the castles and stuff in England, they've been there, and they've got the echoes. They're made out of stone, this and that.
Do you think that's important?
No, I don't. I
you
think
don't
the
think
land
the
is important. I don't. And
Okay.
and then as far as houses go, I think it's the memories.
I mean, I think it would be a good exercise to try out.
I think it's a very interesting theory, actually, and I think it's a very unique viewpoint because it's not something we typically think about.
So how can we test this?
You build a Faraday cage inside of the house, to be honest with you. And if everything stops, that'll tell you no energy's getting in. If stuff still keeps happening inside the Faraday cage, then you know the energy's already in the house. Does that make sense?
Yeah. All right, well.
And we can do that now because there are a lot of bars and places that are building Faraday cages on their premises to stop people using their phones.
Really?
Yep. It's a phone-free place to go and sit, and no one's phone will go off.
I actually kind of really like that idea.
Yep, because it's a Faraday cage. Yep.
Well, someday we'll get Mr. Best back here, and although it's long enough to get here, I think asking you to go to Okoboji would probably be asking a little bit much because that's 4 hours from here. But there is a cabin in Northwest Iowa. It's called the Abby Gardner Cabin. And it was part of the Spirit Lake Massacre, and I want to investigate there so flippin' bad. But that would be, and that's immediately what I thought of when you started your question, so.
See, I was thinking cabin in the woods.
And you also got the Cabin 360 way out west, out east.
Tell me about this, I'm unfamiliar.
So, Cabin 360 has to do with Gettysburg and everything else with the war and all that stuff. Matt Waddell would be a good person to talk to about that. Same thing with Shay, because they were both just recently out there.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
So they could give you a lot of history on that place. And like I said, there it's a cabin. So.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, all right, my friend. Well, we'll talk to you next week then.
Sounds good. I'll be ready.
All right. Sounds good. Take care.
You have a good night.
Yep. You guys have a good weekend.
Thank you.
So, back to the demon house.
Mm-hmm. Or what used to be the Demon House.
Or what used to be the Demon House.
It's now the Demon Building site.
It's true. We are going to be near Chicago in the month of December. And I'm trying to figure out how we can sneak over to Gary.
There's no sneaking over. It's still miles away from Chicago.
It's not that far, actually.
Well, I don't know. But by the time I got to Chicago, I've given up on hope or life or anything.
Yeah, but you're like a 30-minute car ride kind of guy, so.
Yeah, but I go really fast, so I can cover some distance.
So we may go. We may go. Anyway, Demon House.
All right. So where were we?
So we've talked we've got through pretty much the gist of the story with the LaToya Amon side of things, and pretty much got through Zach Bagans' side of things. We did not talk about the dark image that they saw on the camera that Zach claims was responsible for making Mr. Taff, Dr. Taff, excuse me.
PhD.
Yes. Getting him ill.
Thud.
And I don't think we actually ever really talked about. So, as a result of taking part in this documentary, Zach Bagans claims that, let me find exactly what he says is wrong with his eyeballs.
Must we really? You could just make up any rubbish and just allude it to him.
That is true. Yeah.
My eyeballs turned square while I was in the house, and it hurt very much to look left because of the pointy bits.
That's
because of the pointy bits.
I think that's
so
pretty accurate.
Zach claims that he has now got diplopia.
That's a dinosaur.
I'm probably mispronouncing, but it's basically double vision. He claims it is permanent and that he'll have to wear glasses because
no, I can't refute that. Because this is true. When I come into contact with too many spirits, I too get double vision.
There's something coming. And his
face
face is like so dead serious right
just
now.
think about it. When I have too many spirits,
There it is. There it is. I had to think about it.
It's been a long day, and
that's kind of like the K9
meter.
The K9 meter. There's a dog in here.
The Hyats are just really slow on the uptake, I think.
Well, you know.
Anyway, so Zach claims that he has this eye issue now, and that he cannot have surgery because he could lose his life. So he's going to have to wear glasses for the rest of his life.
He could lose his life.
He could lose
by
his
being
sight.
operated. Oh, she said life. I'm sorry.
No.
He said sight on the thing.
Did he?
On the documentary. He said he could lose his sight.
Okay.
I was going to say lose
Either way.
I mean, have the surgery if he could lose his life. Let's take the risk.
Either one.
It's a 50-50 shot. Let's do it.
Got my vote.
No, right?
Man, we're horrible.
We are.
Really, if you think about
We
it.
really are.
It's like we're the paranormal ISIS.
Please.
Infidel.
That's right. So, Dr. Taff, for his
Infidel. Oh, sorry.
for his part in the documentary, if you watched, you saw that he was shortly put into the hospital because his organs all started shutting down. And the claim was that none of the doctors knew why that was happening. And he spent a pretty good stint in the hospital. Today he is better, but says that he still has some lingering effects of that, and that still claims that the doctors have no idea why all of his organs started to shut down. So he is blaming that on his...
As a side effect, every now and then I vomit up bullshit.
The claims are just, I'm sorry, ridiculous.
And then I don't know if we ever finished talking. I don't know if we actually even talked about the camera guy who kind of lost his shit. His name was Adam. And right after Dr. Taff, I think it was right after Dr. Taff was in the house, Adam started not feel well. the tag on the screen tells you that he snuck down to the basement without anybody seeing him and was basically just hanging out by himself down there. And then they ended up finding him down there, and he was acting really weird. And then that night at the hotel, he, lost it. Let's see.
What way? Mentally, physically?
Both.
Yeah.
So, cameraman Adam Albrandt is his name. Says he started acting very strange. We see him sneaking a peek to make sure the others are noticing. This is from Skeptical Inquirer again. So, he does kind of look around to make sure everybody's watching him, and then he hurries off to the basement. And then the tag on the TV says that he went down there and nobody noticed.
But
So
they filmed him going down there.
right, yeah.
Yeah.
So when they get back to the hotel, Zach is telling somebody, "Hey, Adam was just in my hotel room and just threw up blood in my toilet." Of course, this isn't on film. And then we see Albrandt acting crazy and violent in the hotel while Baggins and crew watch from down the hall. And he looks really pissed and he's losing his mind and he's yelling and he's hitting things and he goes in the elevator and refuses to come out. One thing that I thought while I was watching it, and the Skeptical Inquirer mentioned as well, they're in a hotel and nobody else peeks out. No other doors open. I would assume they're in a hotel in Chicago. I can't imagine there's a nice hotel in Gary, but nobody peeks out.
I hope nobody in Gary is listening to this because
But you know what?
they're not coming across as...
My hometown Tama is the same way though. Like, the highway bypassed it and there's nothing there anymore. It's a dying town, so I get it. Like, and there's not a nice hotel in Tama. There's a casino on the Meskwaki settlement. It's not in town. Yeah, so people now can bypass Tama to go to the settlement or to go to the casino.
That is not a good endorsement on a town, is it? It's like, no, people are not going to come to the casino if they have to actually come through the town.
Right. Well,
we need to bypass it.
What it feels like anymore.
It's going to cost $3 billion, but it's worth it.
Yes. So I get it. And there's not a nice hotel in Tama either. So I really don't think there's probably one in Gary. But yeah, so we see Adam kind of lose it. There's no other guest that interacts with this. And for as loud as they're being and as scared as everybody seems to be, that was really weird. So they finally get Adam calmed down. They take him into one of the hotel rooms. He tells everybody to turn their cameras off. Everybody pretends to, but one of them's left on and they put it underneath the table. And then Adam starts basically telling how he was possessed, essentially. And then he ends up kind of threatening Zach, and the next day basically tells Zach to go into the bathroom and slit his own throat. And so Zach fires him. At the end of
Zach can be firing his own viewers half the time.
Yeah. I know, right? You fire us.
At the end of the documentary, I think, is when they're telling they say it looks like Adam fell off the deep end. He's got 666 tattooed on his knuckles now, and he seems to be living a very dark lifestyle. And basically, they're insinuating that he has become possessed and
a fan of Nero.
Right. Yes, exactly. And is fully engrossed in this lifestyle. The Skeptical Inquirer looked up Adam Albrandt's IMDb page, and he's listed as an actor and a cinematographer. And he's been in films where his character acted very much as he did during the documentary.
So he's an extra.
Probably. So I would go on to suggest that was probably shocking, I know, but probably fake. It says he's
still my beating heart.
I know. It says he's known for violent horror films and has credits as a director, writer, editor, producer, special effects, and so on. Pretty much every aspect of making a film with 8 credits as an actor. And basically talks about like...
So not a paranormal investigator at all?
No.
Huh.
So it's kind of curious if he I mean, does anybody ever know, was he with Ghost Adventures prior to this, or was he hired just to do this
I think
documentary?
they talked about it, and I'm not sure if I remember this correctly, but for some reason, I think that he knew like Billy or somebody, but had maybe helped them with filming in the past.
I didn't know if maybe, kind of the whole setup. Let's get
Maybe
this guy.
Billy or Jay or one of them.
He knows how to run a camera, and he's also an actor, so he could pull this off.
He does possession like Frank De Niro. Robert De Niro.
There you go.
Or his brother Frank. I mean, whichever De Niro you prefer.
So anyway, Zach's saying that there were 3 people who were affected physically, potentially mentally, by this house, which is part of the reason that he had to tear it down. I guess it all goes into how much you believe.
I need to interject right here, though. When it was the Demon House, but before it was the Demon House with those occupants, nothing happened. Mm-hmm. It was rented after it was the Demon House, and nothing happened.
Right.
Now suddenly they get hold of it, and it all starts happening again. No,
yeah, that doesn't make it very believable, does it?
Well, no, it wasn't believable to me from the get-go.
I know. I'm just saying.
It's
when you look at it from that perspective.
Yeah, it's a documentary, and they did that to make money from something that had been in the news. So, no, I'm not buying it.
Well, and the closest they ever get to an actual investigation, short of when Dr. Tapp was in there with all of his gadgets, is at the end when Zach is basically boarded into the house. And he's left in there by himself.
Boarded into it?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, they put plywood over all of the windows.
And all the doors.
So who took it down so I could sue him? They should have just left it boarded.
Wouldn't that have been nice?
Right, demolish it now.
He did have a cell phone. And through this whole thing, I also want to point out that there was a security camera in the corner of the living room that was on all the time. Skeptical Inquirer pointed out that there's only a few scenes at the beginning that actually have a counter or a timer on the surveillance camera. But after people start becoming possessed and all of these crazy things start happening, magically that counter disappears. So probably acting. Anyway. So the end of the film is Zach being boarded into this house to confront whatever's there, and it's incredibly anticlimactic. Mm-hmm. He walks around, checks out the windows and the doors so we can see that there's wood on them, and eventually goes and sits on a bed. And then you hear, he says that he hears an EVP, which sounds like kids. I suspect it could have been somebody outside because that's really what it sounded like. Then he claims, I think, that he heard like a goat or something, which he talks about this goat man that's been haunting his dreams forever. Mm-hmm. And then,
good or bad? Bad.
Right.
He's bad.
Then he's sitting on this bed and he starts to act like he's very afraid and says, "Get away from me." And while he's recording on his cell phone, he drops his cell phone, and you can see a dark image kind of come into the room and go out. Now, this is on his phone's camera, which is on a bed unfocused. Could very easily have been Zach, because you can't see Zach in the frame. I mean, it's just, you see somebody move in and out, so it's not definitive of anything. But literally, that's it. Mm-hmm. Nothing else happens. And in fact, it's probably 5 minutes of of a 2-hour documentary that he actually spends locked down in this house.
It's starting to remind me of a can of cat food in a documentary.
We're only 9 days away from season 2.
No, we're not.
As of this recording.
Well,
so.
No.
No, if I don't watch it, it doesn't exist. Perception is reality. I'm not going to perceive it.
So I think I can safely say that we all agree that for Zach's portion of this, it's garbage.
You're going to make me watch that thing.
I am bummed that you haven't yet because I was excited.
The movie? No. Because at some point he's going to get royalties from, if I watch it on YouTube or whatever, no. And
he's going to get them whether you watch it or not.
Yeah, but not from me. That's the point. I was thinking about doing it, and I got time, and me and Nico were sitting in the WTF bar, which is a wonderful sentence to put together. We've got the WTF bar.
There it is.
But we were just flicking through YouTube, and the Squirrel Cage episode, and it's not up anymore. We watched it one night. Next night we went to watch it with Eric, and I couldn't find it. So obviously somebody put it up there.
The episode?
Somebody said, you're not allowed to do that, and got took down again.
Yeah.
But we watched it, and we've been to Squirrel Cage Jail before he went. Mm-hmm. And it was such nonsense that when I thought about, I gotta watch I'm not gonna make it through the Demon House. It's not gonna happen. I've read the case notes, I've read the study and everything else. I do not need to watch Zach run around like an idiot, and trying to get his Oscar scene. No. I couldn't do it. I'm sorry.
I thought what was interesting about it, though, was to kind of get a feel of the other characters involved.
Which aren't real.
Well, but Captain Austin is real. I mean, he probably...
Captain Steve Austin?
No. The police captain.
Oh, right.
Yeah, he's the...
Captain Austin, who...
He's the $5 man.
He, he's a paranormal investigator, and that was his interest in this whole thing, but the documentary will have you believe that his interest in this was from a public safety standpoint, and that I think he was called into the house initially to check on the family and the children, but
he was doing a lot of
that
extracurricular visits.
Mm-hmm.
After that, it was all his professional curiosity, as he called it.
Yeah.
Or extracurricular visits.
He could have been doing
I mean, you can label it how you want, but they're both the same.
Yeah.
Now, we talked a little bit about LaToya Ammons, and there's some things that we kind of touched on but didn't get into too much. So, as John kind of, I think, briefly mentioned, her kids had been, she had been talked to by the school district for her children not attending school starting in 2009. This all started in 2011, 2012, and she had been talked to again about her kids not going to school. This all leads up to part of the reason why her kids were taken from her, because this is an ongoing issue. She's not sending her 3 children to school. She says it's because the kids are unable to get any sleep if they're not in bed asleep by 11 p.m. And let me tell you what, that is so asinine to me that you would suggest that your 7, 9, and 12-year-old children are not asleep or in their beds by 11 p.m. on a school night.
Mine always were, and they were asleep.
Yes.
Yeah, because I'd feed them so much vodka they couldn't stand up.
I mean, most kids have like a 7, 8, 9 o'clock bedtime. So, but she said, if they weren't asleep by 11 p.m., then they were kept up all night by the spirits, and the house was too active, and the kids were unable to get any sleep, and so that's why she was unable to send them to school.
Did you read the notes from, and I can't remember her name, she was one of the case managers from the youngest kid? She said that every time there was something he didn't want to do,
yes,
he'd roll his eyes back and he'd pretend to be possessed.
Yep, and that was the next place I wanted to go with
and
that.
She said that came from his mother's belief or coaching.
Yes.
So that every time he throw a fit, some kids just throw themselves on the ground and flail around or whatever. He'd just do the I'm possessed act.
Yes. So.
And I can see how a kid could pick up on that.
Well,
and start
because he gets
to do
rewarded at home by it. Because his mum's like, it's not your fault if you're possessed, or you're reinforcing my story, or whatever scenario you want in which that's a good thing to the kid.
Mm-hmm.
What it came down to was LaToya and Rosa are almost fanatically religious. Not a bad thing, but they're views on that, and that's why they took this possession thing so seriously, was because they genuinely thought it was real. And so, as John mentioned, 7-year-old starts to see that if I act possessed, A, I've got an excuse. B, it feeds into what my mom and my grandma already think is happening. And then I don't have to answer the questions you're asking me. And so part of the way that LaToya got her kids back was that she had to learn how to discipline them without the religion involved. And so once she was able to show the courts that she could do that, and the kids had gotten it out of their system that we're not going to talk about possession anymore, we're not going to talk about demons anymore, we're not going to do this, then she was granted her kids back. But she had to go through a process to take that out.
I personally have an issue of them, labeling them very religious. They're manipulating religion to suit their own ends, in that I can't pay the rent, or I can't discipline my kids, and, bring them, and I mean, there are a lot of religious people out there. They don't all say, oh, we're possessed and all demons are everywhere. That's not.
No, I think you're right. I think it's a combination of the two, though. I do really think that they are kind of fanatically, but I also agree with you that, because talking to the landlord, I can't remember his name right off, and
Grant. I just made that up. That's
say
what we
that's
do.
not
And then we
right.
just make up a name when we can't remember what. Let's call him Grant.
Grant.
All right.
Grant Wood.
Grant Wood. There we go. She was months behind on rents. And again, as John mentioned, she had used this whole thing as, again, a reason that she hadn't paid her rent because she can't, whether it wasn't she wasn't going to work or whatever was going on, she was unable to pay her rent.
Once again, to me, that's suspicious because it started with a fly infestation.
Oh, absolutely. I don't disagree.
Which he didn't. So then, if you're that way in your head, it started off with flies. Must be a demon. Hopefully, Zach.
On the one hand, though, I think that we're all kind of assigning them ulterior motives. There could just be, as ridiculous as it sounds to us, it could be that they are, fanatically religious and just really this naive. I don't know what her education level is, but you're assuming that.
No.
I don't know that. I'm not saying that we're wrong, but.
I'm playing the odds, put it that way.
Fair enough. But there is a possibility that this woman thought that this stuff was all legit.
But if you're religious, there is also the possibility that it was really demons. Because if you're religious, you believe in demons.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, how much credence are you going to give this woman?
I'm not saying that, but I think that we can't just say she was bullshitting the whole time because we don't know that. We're assuming
there's a thing called self-delusion.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying she didn't believe it, but the steps to get her to believe her own story means it had to be a story up front saying, well, I'm not in control of it, therefore an outside force is in control of my life, not me. And that's how these things get started. And then depending on your belief system.
Yeah. No, and I'm agreeing. I mean, I think that she is she could be. I don't know that she is, because I don't know this woman.
She could be bullshit. I mean,
absolutely. I think it's one or the other.
Yeah.
But I think that it's incredibly possible that she is delusional enough to really think that everything she is putting forth is legitimate. And, I'll put this back talking about Amityville. The Lutzes took lie detector tests and they passed them.
Yeah, because they've been
because
saying the
they
same
were
thing.
Also delusional.
Yeah, so many times. Goebbels said, repeat a lie enough, people will believe it.
Yeah.
And that includes yourself.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
So.
Well, and I think, then you kind of, possibility, you start believing this stuff so much, it kind of goes back to when we were talking about the entity case. You start believing it so much, do things start happening? Not like, okay, what I mean by that is they're happening in your head.
Yeah.
That you start to draw the lines.
Right, and you start to, every little tick and crick that I hear in my house becomes something, but it's because I believe it so strong.
Yeah, and another good example of that I saw on Facebook today. Someone took a picture of, and I can't remember where, it's a mental asylum, and there's a very good, looks like a woman in white gown on a roof, and it came from The Guardian. And they said, oh, it's an ghost of an inmate ready to jump off the roof. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, that is, like, looks really much like, a woman in a white thing. But the more I look at it, and I know I'm doing pareidolia, you know, you do know you're doing it half the time. You're like, but there's some things that aren't quite right. It's, and there's a little square bit on top of the head that looks kind of squarish. And somebody sent in the pictures of the Guardian of the place during the day, and there's a chimney. And it's exactly where she's standing.
Well, and we've talked about a picture very similar.
But to get to my point, on Facebook, it starts off great catch. Someone then posts a picture of the chimney saying, no, look, guys, if you'd read the article, that picture was in the article, it really is the chimney. Later on, great catch. It's like, it doesn't matter what you say or do.
Absolutely.
You know, and it drives me crazy, but it shouldn't.
Yeah.
But it does. It's just like,
I would be curious to know the Amon's story after they moved out of the house and moved to this.
They're fine.
They're fine.
Well,
that's
no, I don't see how
because the
that's
Indy
possible.
Star talked to her in 2014. So this was 2 years later, and she had already relocated to Indianapolis, and she was fine.
And she didn't want to talk about it anymore.
So I found it from the Indy Star article. So it says in April 2012, DCS petitioned Lake Juvenile Court for temporary wardship of the 3 children. The request was granted. DCS found that Amon's neglected her children's education by not having them in school regularly. The agency made the same finding in 2009, its records show. Amon's told Valerie Washington, who was the CPS worker, Amon's told Washington there were times she could not send the kids to school because the spirits would make them sick or they would be up all night without sleep. DCS temporarily placed her daughter and older son at St. Joseph's Carmelite Home in East Chicago. Amon's youngest son was sent to Christian Haven in Wheatfield for a psychiatric evaluation. Clinical psychologist Stacy Wright, who evaluated Amon's youngest son, said the boy tended to act possessed when he was challenged, redirected, or asked questions he didn't want to answer. In her evaluation, Wright wrote that he seemed coherent and logical except when he talked about demons. Said then that the 8-year-old stories became bizarre, fragmented, and illogical. Wright said his stories changed each time he told them. So it goes on to talk about that, and then she's got a great quote here. This appears to be an unfortunate and sad case of a child who has been induced into a delusional system perpetuated by his mother and potentially reinforced by other relatives, she wrote in her psychological evaluation.
That's kind of what I paraphrased earlier.
Yeah, no, you did. I just happened to find it.
No, I'm just amazed that I remembered it.
It's kind of, it's amazing the power. This is kind of an example of the power that we have on our children.
Yeah,
it's the power of suggestion.
Yeah,
because children trust their parents, the power of suggestion is way strong.
Yeah. One psychologist recommended Amon's be assessed to determine whether her religiosity, I can't even say it, religiosity, may be masking underlying delusional ideations or perceptual disturbances.
But that's where I disagree, because Christian religion isn't about demons. That's a small fragment that most people don't even touch on unless they go to the preacher and say, yeah, I've been,
But if she focused that hard on it.
So there's something wrong. There's some dysfunction.
Oh yeah. There's definitely, I don't know this woman, but the fact that somebody is suggesting that she needs to be
lobotomized.
I don't think they're saying that. But
trying to guess the word.
They think that she needs to be checked out. So obviously there's belief that she's got some mental health issues anyway. But DCS did set goals for the family. One of them stipulated that the children not discuss demons or being possessed and take responsibility for their actions.
No! Really? No! Please, no!
Don't take responsibility.
I'm in hell.
Amon's was told that she needed to use alternate forms of discipline not directly related to religion and demon possession. So I bet this started out with her saying, if you're naughty, the demons are going to possess you. And it blew up and spun so crazily out of control. But what's crazy to me is in this story, I think if you read it,
It
but-
should be really clear that there's some psychological issues here.
No, of course there is.
But then you enter Zach Bagans, and now there's no psychological
Which
issues.
is why I don't like him.
It's a factual thing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like anybody, and a lot of, I don't want to say all, but there are quite a few mediums or ghost hunting groups that will do exactly the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
You'll have someone, you'll go into their house or you'll meet with them or whatever. They'll give you a story, and instead of saying, okay, let's investigate this and drawing a conclusion, oh, it's demons, oh,
Yeah.
blah, 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 blah,
Mhm.
oh, scary, you need to move, you need to do whatever, you know.
And
wrong.
that's
Tear the
exactly
house down.
Yeah, whatever.
that's exactly what
Make a
happened
parking
here.
lot.
Yeah.
You know that
All those demons, 200 demons, they need to park their cars.
Clairvoyant told her that there were 200 demons in her house, and Father Mike told her house was infested.
And that's criminal, as far as I'm concerned.
Honestly,
Mm-hmm.
It's just as criminal as the people getting tried now for egging someone on for suicide.
yes.
You know, it's just, I think it's criminal. But, you know, you're not allowed to do that because, you know, joining the state and religion would probably get that knocked down quicker and shit. But you're pretty much someone with a mental health issue, you know, even if it's a depression where they're out of control, so they say, okay, something else is controlling my life. If they're religious or whatever, then it must be demons because that's logical, apparently. And then someone eggs them on
Mhm.
and makes the situation worse and worse and worse and worse, you know.
Yeah.
And I do think that's what happened here.
Yeah.
Honestly, I really do. Now, there's
But
always
for her, it was also a relief because she's
Yeah.
like, "Oh, I don't have to take responsibility."
well,
anymore."
exactly. Who wants? I mean, when there's bad shit happening to, I mean,
Fight
like,
it.
huh?
Fix bayonets. Fight it.
Yeah. I mean, like they said, you know, the Skeptical Inquirer pointed out, you know, like the CPS worker had, you know, she's clearly accident prone, but it's much easier to blame those accidents on her involvement with the house than to just say,
You're a klutz.
girl, you can't walk straight and chew gum at the same time without hurting yourself.
Yeah. Not only that, but some of the activities that she was doing. I mean, the one was water skiing?
So she broke 3 ribs water skiing. She got 3rd-degree burns from a motorcycle. She broke her ankle running in flip-flops.
I mean, but yeah, I mean, these are
All in a 30-day period.
things that happen when you're stupid.
Or have a drinking problem.
Either one.
Sorry, you said, "Girl, you can't walk straight." I just went straight back to the entity story again. I can't help it.
He is dying right now.
It's not funny.
You're right, it's not.
Oh dear.
But one of the reasons...
Demons made me say that.
right. You know, I think there's a lot of... First of all, Zach Bagans makes it easy for people to... and makes it okay for people to blame other things than themselves for bad things that happen.
Mm-hmm.
Which is stupid. And it's irresponsible.
I'm not gonna say my biggest issue is that he takes advantage of people that are, you know, somewhat vulnerable. But the other big issue I have with him is, especially because he got famous, when you say to people, "What do you do?" Oh, and then you use the vernacular, "I'm a ghost hunter." You don't say I'm a paranormal investigator or whatever. At least I do, but like ghost hunting. So it ends up the same thing.
It's
You know,
what they recognize.
And then that's what they then lump you to.
Yes.
And I hate that,
Yes.
you know, because then you have to try and spend freaking hours explaining, no, that's not what we do. That's not what it is. That's not what it's about.
It's a TV show. Yeah.
You know, and the thing is, you know, that's him, one person, you know, that just left a Snickers bar in a swimming pool.
Well, exactly.
You know, and now everybody, now you
Yes.
can't go in it, you know.
Because we as a team, we've approached places and we know they're like, nope, not going to do it. I've seen it on TV. I've seen what you people do. And then you go and you sit down and you finally get the opportunity to have that conversation with them and explain how it really works.
Silly.
What
You're
you
not
really
a raving
do.
lunatic.
Yeah, I'm really not crazy, you know, and then it seems to work. I mean, I think the Granger house is a perfect example of that. They had the idea that it was just going to be us running around like a bunch of idiots.
Yep. So, well,
we're not that crazy.
Here's another big question I have. I mean, he's making all this money in buying all these, well, all these artifacts and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Why can't he buy a pair of glasses that fit?
Because he thinks he looks cool.
Doesn't he own a mirror? At least a haunted one or
bet
something?
He owns several.
I'm sure his whole house is covered in mirrors. Look at me!
Yeah,
exactly.
I have no doubt. Look at me in my Baby Gap t-shirt.
Mm-hmm. So not only has Zach kind of...
We're going to get sued.
Whatever.
Defamation.
First Amendment.
No, you can't sue someone for defamation of character if they don't have one.
That's right.
That is true. Number one. Number two, if they are on TV as a public figure, they're fair game. And
number three, this is satire. At least that's what I'm calling it.
So if he calls me, I'll just be
so
like,
you're allowed to do people like that for
we can
satirical
get a hold
purposes.
of his phone number.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Have we got his phone number?
We could. We
Really?
could get it.
Jason Hexton has it.
I want the phone number. I just got an email, and this is... I'm probably going to edit this out. But
was it from Zach Bagans?
No, it was one of those scam ones that says, I know. And I'm like, who the hell is this guy? And I click on it, and it's like, I know what you do. I've infected your computer, and I can turn on your webcam and microphone without you even knowing. And I have video of you pleasuring yourself. And I emailed him back, and I said, the first thing that went to my mind was, I don't have a webcam. Should it have not been, I don't pleasure myself in front of the computer? I don't know. But anyway, if you really do have this video, I'd like a copy of it, because you're asking for $1,400. And I want to see the quality of the video before I pay that amount of money.
Right.
Because if it's really good quality, you're fine. If it's bad quality, I'll pay you not to post it. Sorry. I don't know how I ended up there from where we were.
Yeah, that's okay.
Oh, Zach Baggins' phone number. Yeah. There we go. Yeah. So I'm going to give that, I'll just email it to that guy.
Yeah.
And then he can say, I've got videos of you pleasuring yourself.
Right.
They're called Ghost Adventures.
Amen. Seriously.
Uh-huh. Nice.
So the reason I wanted to finish talking about this episode, though, was because I think that it's important to use this as an example for when people are going and doing private investigations. Because number one, you cannot let Zach Bagans be your how-to on literally anything, especially an investigation. But number two, I think it's important to know that you can run into people who have mental health issues or, really high levels of religious fanatical behavior. And so just because somebody says something doesn't mean it is. And if you're investigating somebody's house, that's your job, is not to go in there because they said. It's to go in there and find out if this is really happening. But it's always important to not rule out mental health problems.
And number three, it's not a demon.
Right.
What's a demon going to do hanging around your house? Really?
They got better things to do.
Well, you'd hope.
Right.
Either that or that makes me, I tell you what, if I go to hell and I die, I'm going to be like number one demon within about a week. That's what they all do.
I'm going to run this shit.
Yep. Was it better to rule in hell than serve in heaven?
So I've said before, we really don't do much in the way of private investigations. And in fact, the last request we got, the lady didn't return our phone calls after we set everything up and John changed his plans to go.
Yep. Thank you, whoever you are. You're probably never going to listen, but
seriously,
I had to reach out and say thank you very, very much.
We haven't really run into anybody with mental health issues. We've run into people who watch Ghost Adventures and have it in their head, as you mentioned, that that's reality. And so we've had to kind of combat that. Also, drug use, I think has played a part in at least in one of the investigations, because really it's the only one we've done that we didn't know the person. And of course,
I've done a couple of private ones, and I never give a conclusion, because that is a can of worms. And not only that, I can't prove them, and I don't know. If I knew...
So when people call you, what do they tell you they're looking for?
Well, all right, I'm going to pull out one. There's a big old farmhouse about, I don't know, an hour away from where we're at. And he said he kept hearing weird noises that he thought might be voices. Things kept moving around on their own, which is typical. He had some lights in the kitchen with covers, and they used to be moved in the morning, and they're too heavy for a mouse to move or anything like that. So, I mean, we did the investigation, and, we heard a lot of weird noises, but then we tracked them down, and one was like the sump pump, and there was a gasket that went off every now and then after the sump pump, and if you're in a certain part of the house, yeah, it sounded really weird, especially that second sound. We're like, whoa, what's that? But we tracked it down, and you follow it, and, so when we sat down with him, I said, look, we've tracked down a bunch of stuff that we didn't see anything move. We set out, because he said it was always the salt and pepper. So we set those out, and then we left the room and left a camera on them, because otherwise it's because you're here, it's not going to happen. So we were like, all right, we'll just put a camera on and, leave it all night and see if they move. Now, we could go back and do multiple investigations to see, okay, it didn't happen that night. But then, how often are you going to do that? And we said to him, we'd be willing to come back and do it again if you think what we found is wrong. So, we showed him, in fact, we had the sump pump thing on a recorder that did sound suspicious. When we first did it, we were like, ooh. But then when we did it again, closer to where the basement was, and you could hear it, I showed him both, and I said, look, that's what you're hearing. And he's like, oh yeah, oh. So, I don't know. We've done a couple like that. We've also done one, like the one Tamer, where I'm like, wow, that's really weird. We didn't get we didn't get what people reported. We didn't get the red lights or anything else. But then...
And we didn't have a bed, so...
Well, but once again, that's one of those where if nothing had happened, we could have gone back 2 or 3 times and then caught something. But with private investigation, it's hard. We're not going to camp out in your house for a week.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that we also stipulate is, we won't do an investigation when the family's still in the house. So if you want us to investigate, if you want to leave one person because you don't trust us, I get that. That's fine. One person. But the rest have got to be gone.
Yeah.
Because there's no point doing it. You got kids going to sleep and this and that. We won't do it.
So have you run into a situation where you think there might be some mental health issues?
No. I've run into a lot of issues where people have watched taps or ghost adventures and all that stuff. I get more calls than I get investigations.
For sure.
Where people go freaking out, and usually when you listen to them, they've been up the bar, they've been drinking with their friends, and then it comes out as a story, and then they're on the internet, and then they get hold of us, and then we say, okay, call us back tomorrow. We'll set up a time, and then you never hear back from them.
So how do you two recommend for any of our listeners who maybe are into doing private investigations and feel like they've run into somebody who maybe has more of a mental health concern than they do a paranormal concern? How do you suggest they address that with the homeowner?
I always stay rational, but leave it open, if you know what I mean. So I don't want to confront them because that's not my job. I say, well, we can do this. And usually if they're into it that deep, they won't use you. They won't call you back, and that's fine with me because that's a situation I really don't want to be in.
Yeah.
I'm not a psychologist. And the same as ones with demons. It's like, okay, but even if I find one, what do you think I'm going to do? I'm not an exorcist. So, if you want to, the ones that we actually go to and we've had success at, where people get back to us, they're like, can you just check this out?
Yeah.
And really, what they really want us to do is debunk it.
It makes it more comfortable.
That's what we do. I mean, we go in and we look at, we do our best to track things down and debunk them. Now, there's a couple we couldn't debunk, but that's why I say I don't draw a conclusion and say, yeah, it's haunted, get out, it's demons.
Yeah.
It's like, look, we heard this. What do you think it is? Because it's really weird, but if nothing bad's happening to you, then we'll say, well, even if you do have a ghost here, it's not hurting you. And then we'll try and, get them calm that way, saying, look, even if it's a ghost, you go have it in just fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's a good spot for one of those. We've told people just take charge of your environment.
Yep.
You're here, fine, whatever, but just I'll do my thing, you do your thing, and we'll be fine. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of times you can tell with that initial conversation with someone. I mean, you can tell, not necessarily if they have a mental health issue, I'm not saying that, but you can tell, like, are they flying off the deep end? Like, they automatically have already gone to the conclusion that this is demons and, this is something bad, it's something horrible. And then you got the people that are like, well, I hear some noises, I've heard this, footsteps, whatever the case might be. So I think you can tell a lot from that first initial conversation of someone what that investigation is going to turn into.
Because the ones that, dude, it was like, and then I was like, and then dude, and then that happened, and oh man, and then
yeah,
and calm down there.
I would say the last lady who called us, she was pretty worked up and just kept coming back with stories. They were shadow people, is what she was worried about. Of course, she had in her mind then that meant that they were negative. Mm-hmm. She never said demonic, but she was scared of them because they were shadow people. But every time I, made a suggestion, then she'd come back with another story, and she was hysterical. Mm-hmm. So
the thing that got me about that one though is, how does she know what shadow people are? Where did she get the term shadow people?
Get a lot of chance to talk during our conversation. But I mean,
if you follow that back, okay, you know the term shadow people. Yeah. So where did you get that from? It's from the TV. And there you go. There's your root of all evils.
And if there hadn't been kids involved, I probably would not have cared as much. I
love an investigation.
She's freaking out to the point where she's scaring her kids. And I kept trying to tell her she needed to not do that. And she just kept getting more and more worked up. So I was concerned for her children because I knew if she was behaving this way, they were probably terrified.
Was that one of my ex-wives? Calm down.
Yeah.
So I guess, for people who are doing private investigations, not that I need to be like any type of authority figure to you, but I really encourage you to, number one, go in and be objective about what is happening. But number two, be cautious for people who, really want their house to be haunted and are really just focused on that no matter what you're going to give them, who maybe have a mental health problem, who maybe have a substance abuse problem. I mean, these are things that you can run into when you're agreeing to go into a stranger's home who's got these claims. So just be careful with that. We can't just go busting into people's houses and we're not all going to be taps. We're not on a TV show, and that probably that probably is the most important thing to remember, is that none of us are on a TV show. Even if you're filming yourself for YouTube, and if you're doing a private investigation and making a YouTube video of it, I have an issue with that as well. But
no, I don't. But you keep everything. I mean, because it's still research and it's still documentation. To me.
Well, so is Demon House.
No, it's not. That's not research. Come on. That is not research.
I am generalizing, but I feel like a majority of the investigative videos that are on YouTube are done in the same format.
Yes, they are.
That they see on TV.
Yeah. But when we do it, we do video because if anything happens, we want it documented.
You're right. You're right.
And also, whoever your client is, they want it documented.
But
you can't just turn up the next day and say, give them stories. Yeah. Oh yeah, I kind of felt funny about 2:00.
But you don't go into an investigation creating a YouTube episode.
No.
There are people who go into investigations to create a YouTube episode. That's where my issue lies.
We'll use footage that's totally anonymous.
Yeah.
And we make sure there's no pictures on the walls or anything.
Well,
and we also ask them.
Yeah. And I think with, the things that you're showing on YouTube, they're an example of you saying, okay, this is what happened. This is happening. I don't have an explanation for this. And you're actually looking for people to offer something. Not, hey, I want to entertain you. Think I'm cool. And maybe someday I'm going to get to be on real TV.
No, I mean, we still want to entertain people because it's their interest, but not entertain people.
But you're doing it on more.
Look at me!
Yeah, you're doing it more on, I think, a real investigative curiosity point as opposed to the entertainment aspect.
Yeah.
Which is why, as you've pointed out yourself, your views are less because you're not screaming and running and flipping out.
Yeah, which is, we're not entertainment in that way. We're more, I mean, you've got to be entertained by a video to go back and click on another one, but it's more of, I'll read a history book because I like history. Someone else might not, so it's entertainment in that it's your interest.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I think we can wrap this episode up then.
Whee!
Vicky, if you're listening, I hate you.
Who knew the doll walked too? Like, seriously.
Sounds like my wife after sex.
Oh my god. All right. It's time to wrap this up.
I was gonna say something, but I'm not going to. I'm not gonna do it. I'm not going to. No.
All right. Well,
I'll say it off air.
Next week we will be back with another case.
Oh wow. There's going to be another one that I don't believe in, isn't it?
Well, there's not much you do believe in, so
no,
probably.
there is. There are cases where I'm like, whoa, but
I'm yet to find that case.
Well, I found them.
Well, then tell him to pick one. Have him.
No,
pick
that's
one.
fine. No, I don't mind being the.
Have him pick one, so maybe I can be the fart in the
Here's the thing
spacesuit.
that I don't mean to go backwards.
Here's the thing. Hashtag.
I know.
Matt,
I owe you $1.
you owe me money.
Here's the one hang up I have is there's always a little tiny part of me that says, what if this really happened and we've all just brushed it off? Like, what if her daughter really did levitate? What if that really did happen?
If you play the odds, that's all you can
Well,
do.
I know, but there's always just that little part of me that's like, what if that really did happen? And we are all so quick to brush it off. Now, I agree with you. It probably didn't. I don't know what happened that would have made them feel I don't know if she arched her back weird or what was happening that made them feel that way, but there's always just that little bit of me.
The thing is, for example, the photographs from the Enfield poltergeist, where they actually captured her levitating.
Jumping off the bed.
You could see it's just a kid jumping off a bed.
Yeah.
And the point is, nobody's caught it. And why haven't they caught it? Of all of these cases and sightings and everything else, even the ones that are being investigated while it's happening, all we got is a kid jumping off of the bed.
Yeah.
I mean, so, I'm sorry, I do play the odds. Now, do I say things like that can't exist? No, but I'm not going to take your word for it every time after time these come up, especially when there's backgrounds like we've discussed in the last 2 episodes. I'm going to play the odds and say, probably didn't happen.
Oh, I agree. Well, and where that comes from is, so as an emergency dispatcher, I took a call one night, elderly woman who lived in a retirement community, and she called 911 because she kept seeing a little girl who was asking for her grandfather. Now, I admit, I initially thought that it was probably, maybe Alzheimer's or dementia or, some type of mental health problem. But the paranormal investigator in me said, what if she really is seeing this?
And that's fair.
The closer people get to death, the more open they seem to get, because a lot of people on their deathbed can see all sorts of people who are no longer with us, So there's always that possibility, but we always automatically just jump to, well, she's crazy.
No, and I can buy into that. And, I'd be the same. I'd be like, ooh, maybe she is.
I know. I wanted to. I'm like, can I come?
Yeah,
to
can
your
I come
house?
bring my K9 meter just in case there's a dog under the bed? Or,
Exactly.
I mean,
They're gonna send the
I buy
dispatcher
that.
this time instead of the cops.
it's the big exposés and I'm in the papers. They're doing a documentary.
Yes.
Let's have a book. No, I can't buy them because they go too far. And for me, book hint, leaps of faith.
Yeah.
There it is.
No, but it's too much. You know, you're asking me to believe too much with no substance.
Mm-hmm.
I can believe that, yes, things like that may exist, and I love looking for them. But when people come at me with so much bump,
Yeah.
which is not grounded, and we got a PhD investigator that couldn't investigate his own finger, you know, oh, well, yeah, all this happened, but no, we didn't document any of it. It's like, really? Come on.
Yeah.
So I do have a problem with that, and yes, I'm the thought and spacesuit in the room when those cases come up.
We're used to it.
Sorry.
All right, so we will leave it at that. We'll be back next week with another case file. With that, do you want to get a hold of John? Or get a hold of John, or just see what he's up to. I don't know. You can get a hold of him that way too.
You're cheap.
I'm on the corner every Friday.
Oh my God. You can find him on the Facebook and the YouTube at WTF Investigations and added .com on there. And you can find his website, which will take you to all of his social media. You can get a hold of me on Facebook at C Paranormal Sarah. It's SEE Paranormal Sarah with an H. You can find all three of us on the Facebook and the Twitter at Seeking the Paranormal. And of course, if you're listening, you've already figured out how to listen to us, but you can find us just about anywhere they have podcasts available. And most importantly, go to Amazon and buy.
We're going to push this book again?
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
always.
We're going to keep pushing it.
Buy something.
Buy Leaps of Faith. You can find the link to it on our Facebook if need be, but check it out. Give John some feedback on it. Give him a rating on Amazon or Goodreads.
Give the podcast some feedback.
Yeah.
As well. Yes. We spend hours planning these.
Yeah.
I mean, half of my life is just planning what to say on these podcasts.
Me too.
I mean, we should write scripts for other podcasts.
We
The amount of effort we put into this.
Yep. Every time I'm on the toilet, I think.
Oh
about
my
what I'm
God.
gonna say.
Really?
during the podcast.
I will say we have the least opinionated listeners ever. So
Is that why every time your opening statement is, "Ugh,
Oh, I wrote that down, huh?
I'm getting interference on the mic.
Sorry. To God.
Burritos and donuts.
That splash was holy water. Power of Christ compelled me.
All right, we're cutting it off, folks.
Pea soup.
And we're out.
Thank
Good show,
you.
everyone.
Thank you for listening. Till next time, keep seeking the paranormal.
Seeking sanity.
Thank you for listening, and be sure to follow Seeking the Paranormal on Facebook at Seeking the Paranormal, and also on Twitter at Seeking the P.